If you have ever been a profitable sports bettor, then you will know what inevitably happens. The sportsbook limit your account and you need to move your business elsewhere. But just how do they do it? And can you stay under their radar for longer than expected? If you plan to make a profit from sports betting, then this video is an important watch for you. And most people think there's something sneaky or mysterious going on behind the scenes. But in reality, it's much simpler than that. Bookmakers are running very cold, data-driven systems. They're not guessing. They're not watching you manually. They're comparing your behavior to millions of other bettors and filtering out anyone who consistently shows an edge. And once you understand what they're looking for, you start to see exactly how sharps get caught. So let's start with the first one. The first mistake, or red flag, is consistently beating the closing price. This is the biggest signal of all. If you're regularly taking a price and then that price shortens before kickoff, that tells the bookmaker everything they need to know. For example, let's say you back over 2.5 goals at 1.95, and by the time the match starts, that price has moved into 1.75. That's not luck. That's you taking a better price than the market eventually agrees with. And if you do that consistently, your account stands out immediately. When I first started taking betting more seriously, this is something I didn't even think about. I was just happy to win. But over time, I realized that beating the price was actually more important than the result itself. And ironically, that's also what gets you flagged. Because from the bookmaker's perspective, if you're regularly beating the closing price, you know what you're doing. Now the next one is really important, and this is where a lot of bettors give themselves away without realizing. That's winning in soft markets. These are areas where bookmakers are weaker. Lower leagues, niche markets like corners or player shots, and early prices before the market has fully formed. These markets don't have the same level of liquidity or attention, which means they're more likely to be mispriced. But that also means bookmakers are watching them closely. So if you're consistently winning in these areas, it's a clear signal. A common situation might be betting on a lower league match early in the week, spotting a price that looks slightly off, and taking it before the rest of the market catches up. Do that once, no problem. Do that repeatedly, and you start to stand out. Now this leads nicely into the next point, which is betting too early. This is something a lot of bettors don't even think about. Placing bets days before an event when the lines are still forming can be a big red flag, because early markets are where the biggest pricing errors exist. And if you're consistently taking those early prices and beating the closing line, it's very obvious what you're doing. Recreational bettors don't behave like that. They tend to bet closer to kickoff when they're watching matches or following the build-up. So if you're always in early, always taking the best price and always beating the market, you're basically signaling that you're operating with an edge. By the way, if you like videos like this and want to see more on this subject, remember to click the like button. It tells YouTube to send you more of this kind of content. And while you are there, you should hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss a system or strategy video. Now the third one is something a bit more subtle, and that's bet pattern profiling. Bookmakers aren't just looking at your results, they're building a full profile of how you behave, the types of markets you bet on, the odds ranges you target, the times of day you place bets, even how your stake sizes change. Out of curiosity actually, have you ever thought about how your betting pattern looks from the outside? Because this is where a lot of bettors get caught. If your behavior looks structured, consistent, and calculated, you don't look like a casual bettor, you look like someone following a system, and that's when the risk flags start to build. Now this is also where something like the Statto app can be really useful, but in a slightly different way. Statto is designed to help you do your research efficiently, build shortlists, and identify good opportunities before matches start. So instead of randomly jumping into markets, you're making informed decisions based on data. You're using artificial intelligence to analyze matches and highlight potential angles, which saves you a huge amount of time. If you want to check that out, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Now the next mistake catches a lot of bettors out, and this is stake precision. This is one of those things that seems harmless, but stands out massively. If you're consistently placing very specific stakes like £97 and 43 pence instead of round numbers, that's not how casual bettors behave. That suggests you're calculating stake sizes based on value or probability. I learned this the hard way. When I started becoming more disciplined, I began adjusting my stakes more precisely. And while that improved my results, it also made my betting pattern look very different from the average bettor. So the key here is understanding that it's not just what you bet on, it's how you bet that gets analyzed. Now another big one is always taking the best price instantly. If you're constantly the first to hit a mispriced line, never taking a bad price, and only betting when there's clear value. That's the exact opposite of how most people behave. Most bettors are happy to take whatever price is available. They're not comparing, they're not waiting, they're not thinking in terms of value. So if your behavior is consistently efficient, you stand out immediately. And this ties into another major red flag, which is avoiding what bookmakers would call mug bets. If you never place accumulators, if you never back big teams emotionally, if you never get involved in casino or slots, then you're not behaving like their ideal customer. Bookmakers love customers who lose in other areas because it balances out any small wins they might have on sports. But if you're only ever placing calculated bets, only ever taking value, and never giving anything back, you become a problem account. Now this leads into what's happening behind the scenes. Every account is essentially given a risk score. This is based on your profitability, your ability to beat the closing price, the markets you bet on, and how your behavior compares to a typical bettor. Once that score reaches a certain level, restrictions start to come in, and they don't always happen all at once. Sometimes you'll notice small changes first. Your maximum stake might be reduced slightly, certain bets might get rejected, you might experience delays when placing bets. This is the bookmaker testing your behavior, seeing how you react, and gradually limiting your edge. Now, one of the most frustrating parts of this is bet delays, especially in play. You place a bet, it says accepted, and then there's a delay before confirmation. During that time, the odds can change. And that's not random, that's a protection mechanism. It stops fast-reacting bettors from taking advantage of quick price movements. Another thing that catches people out is linked account detection. A lot of bettors think they can simply open a new account and start fresh. But bookmakers track things like IP addresses, devices, payment methods, and even betting patterns. So even if you try to reset, you're often already linked behind the scenes. And one of the most telling signs of all is this. You might find your stakes getting limited, but your deposits are still fully accepted. That's not an accident. They're happy to take your money, they're just not happy to let you use your edge. And finally, the last thing to understand, and this is probably the most important, is the psychological side. Bookmakers expect most bettors to follow a certain pattern. They win a bit, then they lose it back. If you don't follow that pattern, you stand out. If you start winning and continue winning, that's when the alarms go off, because the system is designed around the assumption that most people will eventually regress. So if you behave like someone who is disciplined, consistent, and focused on value, you're effectively behaving differently from the majority, and that's what gets you noticed. And like I said earlier, guys, if you're serious about improving your betting, using something like the Statto app can really help streamline your process. Instead of spending hours manually analyzing matches, you can get structured insights instantly and focus on making better decisions. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen and take a look. Now, just to finish this off, let's talk about a few simple ways to stay under the radar, because while you can't completely avoid detection if you're consistently winning, you can reduce how quickly you stand out. One simple thing is to vary your behavior slightly. Don't always bet at the exact same times. Don't always take the absolute best price instantly. Another is to occasionally mix in lower edge activity. That doesn't mean throwing money away, but even things like small stake accumulators or casual bets can make your profile look more balanced. And interestingly, something a lot of experienced bettors do is occasionally use low house edge casino games, not to chase losses or gamble heavily, but simply to create the appearance of a more typical customer profile. Because from the bookmaker's perspective, a customer who interacts with multiple areas of the platform is far less suspicious than one who only ever takes value from sports markets. The key is moderation and control. You're not trying to become a losing bettor, you're just avoiding looking like a perfect one. And just to wrap this up, bookmakers aren't out to get you personally, they're simply running systems that identify and remove consistent edges. So the better you understand those systems, the better you can navigate them. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. It tells YouTube to show you more of this kind of content. And there's another video on the screen right now, so go and check that out and continue learning. I'll see you over there.